It's been a while since people have done an updated guide for class builds and dungeons. Since Floor 6 is released, a lot of new gear has been added to the game, leaving old gear absolutely worthless. Today, I will go over the current meta for every class. We will not be including dragon armor in this video, since it has a high Catacombs level. Instead, we will go over the rest of the gear that doesn't require thousands of in-game hours to grind. If you like what you see, consider subscribing to the channel. I put more work into my videos than most Skyblock YouTubers, and I'm also in the middle of a unique Skyblock Let's Play that I think you would like. Check out my Mage only series for some fresh content. Enough plugs, let's talk about some gear. Like last time, I will split this video into 5 parts, and if I'm good at YouTube, I'll even do that thing where it's like there's little chapters of the video. I've never been able to do it correctly, but I'll try again. I'm going to go over these classes in order of popularity, so in my opinion that is going to be Mage, Healer, Berserker, Archer, and then Tank. This is just so I waste less of your guys' time if you want to see the most popular classes first, since odds are most of you are either Mage or Healer. So without further ado, let's get into the classes, starting off with Mage. Mage is the most popular class, and I didn't want to mess this up, so I called up my good buddy Behirboat, which is a professional mage here in Dungeons, to give me the rundown of his opinion on the best mage guide, just to make sure that I don't mess anything up, make sure I don't get anything wrong. So shoutouts to him for helping me out with this clip, and let's get into what you should have if you are looking to play mage at higher tiers, and the meta. For armor, there was a new armor set added into the game, and this is the one I highly recommend you use. This is going to be the Necromancer Lord armor, and we will have a substitute for the chestplate, since the chestplate can get ridiculously expensive and is probably not worth it at this point unless you're able to afford it, in which case, of course, absolutely go for it. The Necromancer armor gives a small amount of intelligence, gives a massive amount of health and defense inside of dungeons, and is legendary rarity, so if you apply the Necrotic Reforge to it, you'll be able to get a significant amount of mana inside of dungeons, especially if you recombobulate the sucker, you'll be flooded with mana. If you're not able to afford the chestplate, try using Tier 9 Perfect, or if you're very poor, you could stick with Legendary Zombie Soldier. Both of these are decent options for the mage class. And of course, always use the Shadow Goggles. I don't have a pair of Shadow Goggles on me, so let's go run over here. The Shadow Goggles give an extra 60% damage to undead monsters, and give a whopping 200 raw intelligence while being an epic dungeon helmet. It doesn't give any health or defense, but trust me, do not skip out on this item. You need this. Make sure you have it. Moving on to weapons, there is 2 main weapons. You could really use 3, but the 2 main ones you're going to use are the Spirit Scepter, which is good for any mage level really if you can afford it, and is pretty much the go-to weapon for mages. And the Yeti Sword, which is ridiculously expensive, but when it's turned into a dungeons item, it can be insane for mini-bosses and bosses since the damage is basically tripled once it's dungeonized. And finally, for the 1% of people, if you want, grab yourself an Ice Wand. This is a very powerful weapon for mini-bosses and bosses, but it's extremely expensive. So if you're ungodly amount of rich, you could pick yourself up an Ice Spray Wand and do some good work with that. For the most part, I would say it's safe to ignore all of the necromancy stuff. It's not very powerful right now, so you're better off sticking with what the meta is right now. Currently, the infamous left click with the Mage Beam isn't really in the meta unless you have a legendary Ender Dragon pet, Arcata 30, and a recombobulated Talisman bag. So unless you have all of that, I would just not worry about the left click meta. It's not really important, and if you do have all of that, why are you watching my videos? Get back to work. Make sure you set your talismans for melee. This will be the most powerful you can do for mage, since obviously you're left click and you need to get those ability damages up, so make sure you reforge your talismans for melee. And that'll be just about it for mage, so let's move on to healer. For those of you playing healer, first of all, thank you. Second of all, let's go over your gear that you'll need to be the best healer you can be. There are 2 main ideas with healer, the first one being a lifesteal build with your healer. This is a healer that does as much damage as possible, so they're able to restore their own health. And also a tank healer build, which is the one I recommend and I'm going to go over. This still does involve some lifesteal, and overall just getting a lot of EHP. So if I open up the auction house, I'll show you all of these items. For those of you with little money, I would recommend getting Legendary Super Heavy Armor. If you can't afford that, you can go with the epic super heavy armor. As you can see, it's only about 25,000 coins per piece, sometimes 30,000. This armor gives an incredible amount of defense and health for newish dungeon players. However, this set isn't really the best, and it's only if you really can't afford this next set. Perfect tier 9 armor is something I would consider to be, just about able for everyone to get. I am currently Catacombs 20, and I am extremely lazy when it comes to grinding dungeons. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're looking to start playing dungeons seriously, should be able to work your way towards Catacombs 21, just playing with your friends casually, grinding floor 6 until you get to the boss, restarting, and then keep going. I would recommend reforging this armor to either absolutely perfect or pure in order to increase your damage. This is again if you want to go for your lifesteal build or tank build. The tank should go with absolutely perfect, the lifesteal should go with pure. This will give you several thousand defense and some little amount of HP. If you want, there's also a new Reforge for armor. If we take a look in the new level 6 boss, we can see the giant tooth, which applies the giant Reforge if you have mining level 25. It gives you extra health and is pretty decent for perfect armor, considering you don't get much health in dungeons if you use perfect armor. It's something you might want to consider trying out, and I was really hoping that we would see this. So if you're looking to play healer, go with perfect armor if you can afford it. For weapon, Livid Dagger, perfectly fine. Again, you get 100% attack speed, and it's a very, very powerful weapon. Make sure you have your Mender's Fedora so you can double your healing on other players, since that's obviously very important. And lastly, your Talisman should be set for damage if you're going for the lifesteal build, or you should go with a mix of shiny and pleasant so you get some HP and defense, making yourself have a higher EHP. For pet, you have two options. You could go with the Epic Tiger for some lifesteal, or you could go with the Blue Whale for some EHP. Again, this is all down to your personal preference. There isn't one I'm going to recommend since they're both just about equal. Just focus on one and try not to make yourself too much of a hybrid. Either choose lifesteal or defense. Next up is the personal class I play and my favorite, Berserker. With the release of Floor 5 and Floor 6, we got this new armor called Shadow Assassin. And Shadow Assassin is basically an upgraded adaptive armor for Berserkers. This armor gives a massive 25 strength and 25 crit damage for every piece, with the full set bonus giving you 1 strength for every enemy you kill. While this does reset every time you enter a dungeon, so it's not permanent, at the end of dungeons, if you're the one killing the majority of mobs, you will have a tremendous amount of strength. So make sure that you get this to 5-starred. As you can see, it costs Wither Essence, so I haven't quite maxed my set out yet, but I haven't been tryharding this floor, so I'm not too worried about it. Something to note with this armor is if you collect 8 fragments called Livid Fragments, and these are obtained from the Blood Room occasionally when Livid spawns in there, you can upgrade this armor like a Recombobulator and make it legendary. Then you can add an actual Recombobulator and turn the Shadow Assassin armor into Mythic. Each of these fragments goes for about 1 million coins as of me recording this, which means to upgrade each individual piece of this armor is about 8 million coins, making the grand total upgrade to get this set legendary 32 million. And then you have to add your Recombobulators. Yeah, this gets expensive. Another thing to note with the Shadow Assassin armor is each different piece gives you a different bonus. The boots give you 10 mana when you teleport, the legs restores 1% of your maximum health on teleport, the chestplate grants you 10 strength for 10 seconds on teleport, and the helmet grants invisibility and 20 speed for 10 seconds on teleport. Teleport is basically aspect of the end. I think that also works with the Shadow Fury ability, but correct me if I'm wrong there. I don't recommend you use the Shadow Fury, and here's why. There's a better sword. As you can see, as it's cut off at the top, it's called the Livid Dagger, and this is the most powerful sword we have in the game right now, since it has the unique ability to deal 100% more damage if you attack a target from behind. This happens more often than you're willing to think. Another thing to note is this sword comes with a base 100% attack speed and crit chance, so that makes you able to reforge every single one of your talismans for pure damage, which is really nice and makes this class a much simpler build than most people would think. For a pet, well, you have a legendary Ender Dragon, and if you're not quite rich enough to afford a legendary Ender Dragon, a high-level Epic Tiger will do you just fine. But again, if you have the coins for an epic or for a legendary Ender Dragon, I would really recommend getting it. It's the best pet in the game. You can't go wrong with it. Finally is the enchant called Swarm. If you're able to pull off putting this on your sword, please do. As you can see, Swarm 5 is the highest level, and it increases your damage by 6.25% for each enemy within 10 blocks of you. That's a maximum of 16 enemies, and a total maximum damage increase of 100%. That's insane. That's double damage. I would recommend getting this book on your sword. I'm gonna probably start putting this book on my sword as soon as I can, now that I'm realizing how strong this really is. That's all I can think of with Berserker. Let's go on to the next class. Next up is Archers, and Archers is a very interesting class because it's quite similar to Berserker in how it works. Basically, you would want your armor to be Shadow Assassin once again. If you can't afford the chestplate, just use an adaptive chestplate. It's pretty darn close to the same thing. Make sure it's reforged to Fierce, just like mine is, since obviously Fierce is going to be the most damage for Archers. If you're feeling a little bit squishy as Archer, then try reforging it to Reinforced. This will give you some more EHP, enabling you to survive longer. Additionally, the best bow for Archer currently is the Bone Meringue, and I'll show you what it does right now, since it's a very unique sword. I mean bow, it's a bow. Basically, you right-click with it, and it throws a bone a short distance and deals the damage that an arrow would. It also deals damage on the way back, piercing up to 10 foes, just like a real bone meringue would, or boomerang. Man, that's a weird word. I get confused saying that. Basically, treat the bow like it's just its ability, throw the bone meringue, it'll come back, and it'll deal massive damage. There's also a current meta where you use the Hurricane Bow and just kind of spam it. However, this method is currently falling out of the meta as it does significantly less damage between each floor, since obviously we need to deal more damage. There's only so much this Hurricane Bow could do, so try and refrain from using the Hurricane Bow spam and switch to something like a Bone Meringue or the Last Breath, which is just overall a randomly good bow. You got it from floor 5, and as you see, it reduces the defense of targets by 50 on hit, and you can reduce it up to 100 defense, which is pretty decent. It's not really game changing, but overall the bow is just reasonably strong. Archer's pretty simple. Use Forceful on your talismans, make sure it's reforged for maximum damage, and just go with that. It's a pretty simple class. There's only one class left to talk about, and let's go over that now. And lastly is Tank, and Tank is pretty much the easiest class to describe, and is actually for the first time starting to become useful. Basically, just get tier 9, 10, 11, and 12 perfect, depending on what your Catacombs level is. Get 5-starred tier whatever you're able to use, starting at tier 9 would be level 21, tier 10, 24, 11, 27, and then finally tier 12 being Catacombs level 30 to use. The higher your Catacombs level, the more better of a tank you'll be, since you'll be able to use higher level perfect armor. Make sure you have the absolutely perfect reforge on this for maximum defense. And also make sure to grab yourself the Reaper Mask so you're able to have double the healing so you'll never ever die. Make sure you have a very strong healer on your team, and your talisman should either be set for either attack speed, damage, or EHP. Personally, I would say just go for damage and try to work off of lifesteal as much as you can, since those talismans aren't going to make a huge much of a difference. For pet, you have a couple options. You always have Legendary Ender Dragon. This will give you a lot of attack damage, defense, EHP, attack speed, and lifesteal. I would recommend this one a lot. Alternatively, you can use a Blue Whale, and I'm going to say don't use the Baby Yeti pet, because if you're playing tank, you're not going to have a lot of strength. So yeah, sorry for everyone who likes the Baby Yeti pet. Personally, I don't think it's good at all. I would say just get yourself a dragon, get yourself a Blue Whale, or even maybe a turtle pet if you have a ridiculous amount of defense. But honestly, your best bet is probably going to be the Legendary Blue Whale or the Legendary Ender Dragon. Make sure you have all of your stuff like your orbs, your zombie sword, and get yourself a Livid Dagger for attack damage. All of this will make you basically invincible on the current floors, assuming you have a high enough level Catacombs and a high enough perfect armor value like 9, 10, 11, 12. Somewhere around there should be perfectly plenty, and I really wish I could use a tank setup. I want to see what it's like never dying. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's episode here on Hypixel Skyblock. If you found this useful, do drop a like on the video. Again, also subscribe. You don't have to, but like, it does mean a lot. We're trying to get to 30,000 so we get that fancy YouTube rank, and it does mean a lot to me. So thank you all again. I hope you found this useful, and good luck grinding dungeons. Alright, take care.